Hi, my name is Leo McPhee, and I'd like to invite you to join me with Robert Simmons here today from Heaven and Earth, and also author of the Book of Stones and Stones of the New Consciousness, among others. And today we're going to be talking about a story that's quite interesting about Sauralite, Azeztulite, and honey and cream Azeztulite also. It's two different forms from New Zealand that have a really interesting story.
Yeah, interesting to me, that's for sure. So you want me to start in on that?
Yeah, start in on that, and just let us know, how you found it. First of all, what it is, and then how you found it, and then of course there's the Azeztulite part of the story. All of them, I guess, need to be told.
Okay, well, we'll jump in on that. So one of the things that's probably, the story of how I found this stone, and even though there's several different kinds of New Zealand Azeztulite on the table here, they're all within the category of what we call Sauralite. And the name Sauralite just comes from the Hindu word Saura, which means the great central sun. And the great central sun is kind of, in our perspective about all Azeztulites, it's the emanating source, the spiritual source of the inner light of the universe. And it is that light and that energy that is expressed through all the Azeztulites. I named the New Zealand Azeztulites Sauralite Azeztulite because I felt such a close and vibrant connection to that central sun energy when I felt what these stones were like.
Yes.
So it was in April, I believe, of 2011. Kathy and I, my wife Kathy and I, took our first trip to New Zealand. And it was an accident in a way that we went because we were actually going to Australia to do some teaching, but we thought, can't miss New Zealand, so we scheduled that in as part of the trip. And while we were there, we spent a lot of time driving around sightseeing, and one day we were driving up along one of the peninsulas, and we were headed somewhere for the day, but Kathy glanced out the window and saw a block away a mineral museum. And she said, "Bob, there's a mineral museum. You've got to go over there." So I pulled the car over, and we went down the road, and we went to the mineral museum. It was quite an old place. It was built in the old days of the gold mining that was done in New Zealand in the 1800s. And that had been a gold mine stone processing building, but they converted it to a museum. And they had all these beautiful New Zealand stones there, as well as stones from other parts of the world. And the curator of the museum was quite an older gentleman, and we were the only ones in the museum, so he gave us a personal tour. And while we really got a lot of education on the minerals of New Zealand there, and at the same time, when we got to the end of the tour, there was a little display counter with things you could buy, very small display counter. And in the counter, my eye was caught by a few little white stones. They were no bigger than this. And they were, I'm talking like an inch at the most. And those stones attracted me energetically, as well as, visually they were just white stones, but they attracted me energetically. So I asked to see them, and I put one up on my forehead, and I immediately felt what I'd been kind of already sensing I might feel, which is the vibration that I've come to know as Azeztulite energy. And Azeztulite was predicted to be found all over the earth in different places as time went on from the discovery of the first Azeztulite.
Yes.
So when we went to New Zealand, I had it half in mind that maybe we would see a New Zealand Azeztulite. But when I found these stones in that little mineral museum, I got very excited because not only was that Azeztulite energy, but it was really strong. And it was very, very sweet. It was like Azeztulite on steroids with love. It's a little strange wording, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
And so I told the man at the store, the curator, I said, "Is there anything else? Do you have any more of these? I want to buy more than just this few pieces that are here." And he said, "No, I don't have any, but I could give you the phone number of the man who brought them in." So he did. And, synchronistically, when we got back to the place we were staying, which was 100 miles away from that museum, we called up the phone number and found out that the man who had brought them in was living in the same town where we were staying.
Mm.
So it was like, oh, very convenient to maybe connect with him. And the first thing he did was invite us to stay at his house if we didn't have a place to stay. That's the typical New Zealand hospitality, I'm told.
Yes.
And we didn't stay there, but the next night we went over there in the evening to meet them and see what stones they might have for sale. And it turned out that this couple, Kevin and Olga, had been collecting New Zealand Azeztulites, only they just saw them as quartz. They weren't aware of the energetic properties. That they'd been collecting them for 50 years.
Mm.
And it was their favorite thing. You know, they'd been rockhounds for, many, many years. And they'd gone to Australia and mined opals and done a lot of different things. But their favorite were the New Zealand quartz, as they called them.
Wow.
So, when we talked on the phone, they invited us to come over, as I said. And when we met them and started talking about stones with them, we were sitting there in their living room. And Kevin kept looking at me and he finally said, "I think I've met you before." And I thought, boy, that is impossible. I've never been to New Zealand before, and this is pretty far from anywhere I've ever been. But, after I said that, he went over to a shelf and he got a little tray of stones, and he showed them to me, and I recognized them. They were stones that he had bought from me at the Tucson Gem Show 5 years ago, 5 years before then,
Right.
5 years earlier.
Right.
And not only that, but he also then went on another shelf and he came back, he had my book. So the synchronicity of this just astounded me. First of all, to stop at the Mineral Museum and just accidentally learn that there is a New Zealand Azeztulite, and then to be directed straight to the person who had more of it than anybody else probably in the country, and then to have already met him and made a connection with him 5 years earlier and not realized it. It was just like, it's the kind of stuff I love.
Yes.
So, we became friends pretty much on the spot. And as we talked, we realized that what we had in common was the love of these stones. I come from this metaphysical perspective, and he comes from a pretty much mainstream, rockhound perspective. But he understood what I was talking about and where I was coming from, and I certainly understood where he was with it. And I could see in my own mind that the love they felt for these stones was a kind of appreciation of the energies, even though they didn't call it that. So first thing that happened is I wanted to purchase whatever they'd be willing to sell. And in the end, they didn't even sell me anything. They gave me things in trade for other stones that they wanted. And they said, "We trust you, just send us the stones when you get home." So the very first beginning of the way this stone entered our world and entered our inventory at Heaven and Earth was through this kind of generosity and gifting and trust. And those are all things that I think of as akin to the energies that all Azeztulites engender in us. But, that's the beginning of it. And of course, when he took us into the garage and he went through some of his trays and he said, "Well, I'm willing to let these go and let these go," and so forth, I found that there were a lot of forms. I'm just going to hold some of them up. There's this material that I call honeycomb New Zealand Azeztulite, or honeycomb Sauralite. And a lot of people say it looks like coral. It has little nooks and crannies and crystal pockets in it. And those pockets are, filled with little sparkling tiny crystals. And that's one of the forms that you might typically see in the New Zealand Azeztulite. Now, I'm going to bring up a couple more of them because they really, to me, are exquisite, and I like to show them in all their variety. This one is a kind of cluster of crystals, you might say, and they form in these things I would call rosettes in some of these New Zealand Azeztulites, or Sauralites as we call them. And the little rosette mounds of crystal points I find to be very beautiful.
Yes.
And a certain number of them have this little black material mixed in with the crystals I'm not sure what that is, but I find it's just kind of a nice contrasting enhancement. So that's another one. And then, as we look through their collection, they also had some spectacular pieces like this, where the crystals are much larger.
Yes.
They're still, the New Zealand Azeztulite and all the quartzes of New Zealand are not big finger-shaped crystals, not crystals the size of your arm or your leg, the way some Brazilian and Arkansas points are.
Right.
They're all much more small type crystals and delicate, but the thing about them that's different is the multiplicity of forms and shapes that they take.
Yes.
I don't know of any area where there's such a variety of crystal forms in a single place. I want to show one more here of the varieties, and this is what we call druzy crystallization, which just means that there's a kind of a bed of tiny, tiny crystals. And these tend to be pure white.
Right.
And are very, very sweet energetically. And so this is one of my favorite types, but I'm pretty much in love with all the New Zealand Azeztulite. And as you know, I'm moving to New Zealand really soon.
Yes.
And a part of that is to be near these stones and to be out in the wild looking for them.
Yes, well, I look forward to those shipments back to us here in the States.
Oh, it's going to be fun to open them. So I'll tell you also, just because I want people to really see the whole range of what New Zealand Azeztulite is like, there are these two, which are examples of the New Zealand Azeztulite that contains amethyst.
Yes.
And on that energetic level, all the New Zealand Azeztulites are very high frequency.
Mm-hmm.
They're very love connected.
Yes.
There's that sweetness quality about them that is distinct to the New Zealand varieties, I think.
Mm.
At least the degree of sweetness is distinct to them.
Yes.
And they activate all the upper chakras and they stimulate the whole body of light. So the whole auric field is kind of kindled by by exposure to these, especially if you hold them for a fairly long time, 10, 20 minutes. But the amethyst bearing sauralites, I like in their own special way, because the amethyst contains a kind of protection energy, a kind of cleansing and purifying energy, and a sort of it brings you into connection with your own divine source in a way that is influenced, I think, by the presence of the amethyst.
Yes.
So just to kind of get through the other sort of introductions of the various varieties of this stuff, which I like so much, there is this material. This is an ocean tumbled piece of what we call honey and cream azeztulite, and in my right hand is a crystallized piece of the same sort of azeztulite. It has iron as a part of its structure. There's the brown is iron.
Yes.
And so the iron helps it be just a little bit more grounded than some of the pure white ones. And it also, the fact that this is kind of this honey color with white, that's why I called it honey and cream. And there's a certain thing about that name that evokes a feeling of these stones too.
Yes.
They have a special sweetness, that's the honey.
Yes.
And a kind of milky feeling of the energy moving through the body in a liquid way, in a purifying way. Yes. So that's the cream aspect of it, I think.
Yes.
And I'm gonna hold up one more of these, because I have one here. I hope they can get in and see this. These ocean tumbled honey and cream azeztulites have little crystal cavities in them sometimes, because these were stones that were formed deep in the mountains, and then over the course of centuries they came out in river floods and things like that, and they got down to the ocean and were actually tumbled in the sands of the beaches.
Right.
But you can see that they're crystal bearing, just like these ones that came out of caves.
this one here has a little cavity right there
Right.
with the golden crystals in it.
That's right. So it's fun, because these are from the beaches of the South Island of New Zealand. There's not all the beaches, but there's one particular place where we found these and where our friends told us to look for them. So I was really, every single one of them thrills me. It's not easy to say one thrills me even more. But I will say this, that the tumbled ones like this lend themselves to cutting and making things.
Yes.
In a way that I really was happy to find, because I like to make, polished shapes like the disc here, and like the wand.
Yes.
These
are beautiful.
And you can see the honey and cream color right in both of them. So the way that the iron gets into the quartz is over centuries the water seeps into the quartz as it's forming, and the iron is deposited in the interior. And the presence of the iron is it's not only grounding, it's also kind of a vitality-inducing influence, I think, so that it kind of is a little bit more of an inner strengthening stone than maybe one that wouldn't have these.
Right, definitely.
But making a wand out of these is such a great thing to do, because the focal point of the wand makes the energy of it just really precise and strong. And wow, I love doing this. It just sends a wave, another wave, another wave right into the head. Stimulates the third eye. The energy actually moves up through the crown and now down through the rest of my body, all the way to my feet. I love it. I really do. You can hold this one if you want to. That intensity and activation is available through any of the stones that are the New Zealand Azeztulites. It's kind of a matter of preference, what people want to work with, whether they want to have a polished shape or be able to wear it, or have a wand to do energy work and to do chakra activation and things like that.
This is very strong.
So what was your impression when you first felt one of these? I know that it was before you were even a part of the Heaven and Earth team that you got exposed to them.
Yes, I think I read about it in one of the catalogs or something and talked to you on the phone about it and had some pieces sent. And one of them was something like this type of piece, the really fancy druzy ones. And I remember sitting with one of these and feeling so surprised, because I'd actually been aware of Azeztulite, the North Carolina Azeztulite, since the early 90s. So I was very familiar with that particular frequency.
Yeah, very high.
Very high frequency. And this, I felt like, was the highest frequency that I'd felt other than phenakite on the planet. Like it was sort of like the next step in evolution of this frequency of Azeztulite, which I feel like the white Azeztulite was the first to sort of bring that frequency in. And this, energetically is almost like fireworks. It was just like it goes in, it kind of works at a cellular level of just feeling almost like it's tickling.
Yeah.
Energetically. It's very fine, but it's very intense, and it has sort of this opening quality to it. And so I was just immediately in love with this Sauralite before I knew about the other types. And it still feels that way to this day, like it's got a particular pitch or a particular frequency to it that is so high, and it's really joyful.
Yes.
And positive and energizing. These are the kind of words that come to mind. And in sorting these, to bring here to the shoot or to get ready for the show, I just find myself almost drunk on them.
Yeah. Yeah, in a really good way.
In a good way.
That you get into a state of euphoria when you handle these for more than a few minutes.
Yeah, I can testify to that.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I wanted to say about these stones, all of them, is that they carry the quality of the land that you feel in New Zealand.
Mm.
You know, I think a lot of people who see us talk about this won't have ever been to New Zealand.
Right.
But even people who haven't been there have an impression of the country as a kind of unspoiled place where nature is really alive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to say that's true.
I mean, there's a vitality to it.
There
that
is.
I think comes through.
Yeah, there's vitality, there's a lot of energy, and at the same time, you know, there's this almost tangible sweetness to the way that the land feels there.
Mm.
And when we were walking there on the beaches, we could feel the energy of the earth come right up through our feet. It was really beautiful to sense that. And you know, these crystals in a way are emissaries of the earth's energy as it's expressed in that part of the world.
Right.
And they can allow people to tap into that sweetness, that purity, that unspoiled quality that you feel when you're on that land.
Yes.
So you know, I'm very enthused to encourage people to meet and get to know, you know, any and all of the types of New Zealand Azeztulites, or Sauralites as I call them.
And I should say too that, you know, these are very rare. I
Yes.
mean, you know, in the scheme of things that you can find in the marketplace, I mean, we're one of the only, and probably the only ones to have this kind of quantity of this material in this part of the world. And they're very, very rare, as you described, you know, that these came from a collection that had been collected over, what, 50 years?
50 years. And he was kind enough, as we've gotten to know each other better, to basically let us have, you know, with more negotiating and trades and so forth, but to let us have his whole collection, except for the ones he kept personally.
Mm.
So both he and others who have found these stones over the years, we've met in our trips to New Zealand, and we've pretty much, you know, welcomed any piece of Sauralite that we could get our hands on into our collection.
Yes.
Because my enthusiasm about it is, you know, unbounded.
And even though it's part of the Azeztulite family, to me I still feel that it's sort of singular in a sense in the frequencies
Sure.
that it holds, and still very rarefied and a really important sort of a touchstone, you know, pun intended, of a quality of energy that I think a lot of people are looking for and wanting to experience.
That's right. I think I would describe as, you know, sort of an analogy, the energies of the different kinds of Azeztulite. You might say, well, there's an apple, and then there's 50 kinds of apples.
Mm-hmm.
And each one has a different flavor, and a different texture, and a different size, and a different color, and a different, you know, attractiveness to people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the analogy breaks down after not very long, but the point is that there are different flavors energetically, and, you know, different colors visually, and different subtle qualities of the different Azeztulites, which I think is what you were talking
Yes.
about.
Yes.
So that, you know, they're all Azeztulites, just like all those apples are apples,
Yes.
but they're also definitely distinctive varieties, and their sort of energy spectrum of each type is something that if you're used to working with crystals and you have the capacity to feel energies of stones develop very much, you'll know that they have different flavors and you can appreciate them in different ways.
Exactly.
So this is something, you know, I really hope that, and I've seen that people connect with very well. You know, the people in Japan have been very enthusiastic about these Azeztulites.
Mm.
And the honey and cream, now that we've started making beads and things like that out of it, is very popular over there to be worn.
Yes.
And we do make pendants out of all these types of Azeztulites that people can wear, so that you can have it on your body and in your energy field all the time if you want to, which is one of the things I recommend.
Yes. Well, and we should also mention the Azezeo activated, super activated.
Yeah, we should. And the last thing I just thought of to say before that is we've done sleep stones of the honey and cream ocean tumbled Azeztulites, where you can take these in and sleep with them at night, just the same way that we have people, or we encourage people to try sleeping with Rosofia.
Yes.
And where Rosofia is bringing in earth energies and sort of the divine feminine energies into the heart, the Azeztulites, the ocean tumbled honey and cream Azeztulites from New Zealand, bring in that light energy, that heaven energy, in a way that is very easily blended with the earth energies of the Rosofia. So if you really want to sleep with a bed full of rocks, which I recommend and like to do, you know, Rosofia and one of these Azeztulites is a great combination.
That is a great combination.
So now you were bringing up the fact that not only have we got all these stones with the energy that we've been describing, but there's another level of it that we've found a way to turn on, you might say.
Yes, well, it's part of, you know, a story that you'll hear more about on other videos, you know, about Azeztulite and the Azezeo process. But this, all of these, we've done the super activated Azezeo process with, that works with pyramidal energy and phenakite and other Azeztulites as an activating principle along with intention. And so let's just say that these frequencies and energies that we've been talking about, we also have the super activated, you know, versions of all of these stones that have been activated to a level that is amazing in terms of they're just that much stronger.
That much stronger, that much faster in the way that they move through the energy system that we, you know, our energy system. And so, you know, for people like me who want to go for the most intensity and the highest energy that they can, it's been a great discovery that we can bring these stones into an energy field that is, you know, stimulated primarily by our great phenakite.
Yes.
And that it can become even stronger and more enlivened than it was before. So both the Sauralites that we, you know, as we found them with all that wonderful sweetness, and the super activated Sauralites that we have put through the Azezeo process are, you know, I think different. They're all attractive, and they might attract different people, just
Yes.
depending on what everyone's taste is. Just, you know, back to my apple analogy.
Yes.
But I encourage everybody who feels connected to what we've been talking about to, you know, visit the website and see what's available,
Yes.
or get our catalog and, you know, try it for themselves.
Yes, and we look forward to hearing from people too what your experience is with these stones, you know, as you learn about them and whichever you get, because it's a very rarefied frequency.
It is, and it's one of the things that I think is on the leading edge of the spiritual and energetic evolution of human beings and the earth together. You know, this whole business of what Azeztulite is about in all its forms, it's a co-creative activity between ourselves, the heavenly ones, the Azez, the angelic beings that activated those stones, and the earth herself in her intention and effort of awakening.
Yes.
You know, we all are, in a certain way, in a synergistic intention together. And so I invite people to discover for themselves what that's like, and you know, meet the Sauralite Azeztulites.
Well, thank you, Robert. This has
Thanks.
been really good to hear this story. And you can find out more about all of the Sauralite and super activated Sauralite at heavenearthjewelry.com. Thank you for watching.
See us on another video soon.